Ever since the massive changes in Season 5, the meta has been constantly evolving. Old strategies becoming further optimized and new strategies popping up that are changing the entire way that people play the game. That's why in this video, we're going to break down the entire meta, talk about the big changes and things you need to know going forward if you want to succeed. But before we begin, a word from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by Proton, the encrypted cloud storage trusted by over 100 million people worldwide. If you haven't tried it yet, Proton Drive gives you secure file and photo storage with true end-to-end encryption, meaning only you can access your data, not even Proton. I use it because it makes backing up all my stuff effortless, my desktop files sync automatically, my photos organize into encrypted albums, and I can access everything across Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS, even offline. Sharing is super easy too. I send encrypted links that I can lock with a password or set to expire, so I control exactly who sees what. And Proton is based in Switzerland, which means my files are protected by some of the world's strongest privacy laws. One of my favorite features is the ability to restore old versions of files, so if anything gets overwritten or corrupted, I can roll it back even years later. And it's completely free to sign up, and using my link helps support the channel. You find it right at the top of the description, and I'll pin it in the comments as well. Now, I cannot recommend Proton enough, and huge thanks for Proton for sponsoring this video. Check it out down below. Let's get back to the video. Now, there have historically been three types of compositions in hero shooters. There is the poke composition, fighting from range, the dive composition, trying to surgically target someone with hypermobility, and both these types of comps have been very represented as of late. We have poke with characters like Hela and Magneto, and dive with characters like Daredevil, Cap, and Venom. But the last type of comp, Brawl, has been out of the picture for quite some time, although it's making a giant resurgence in this season. Now, Brawl is an engagement-centric close range composition. What it mainly wants to do is it wants to close in the gap on you and then overwhelm you, push through you, and not allow you to fight them from distance. When they gain a sort of advantage, they typically will push through you and overwhelm you. And basically it means that you can't really just fight them and poke them and trade slowly. They want to run through shields, run past front lines, run into enemy teams. And the first reason that Brawl is back on the menu is because Groot is now much more powerful than he was before. With him getting the unstoppable status with his Ironwood Wall, he now flips the matchup with Emma from slightly unfavored to slightly favored, and he has counterplay against many of the hard CC characters in the game. Now, Groot is so good at brawling because he does a massive amount of damage from close. He can block off enemies' exits and close in the gap. And when he walls off enemies, if he is backed up by other brawlers, characters that want to get up close and personal, characters like Iron Fist, Magic, even Daredevil, Bucky, these type of characters can basically push into the enemy team, squish them between the wall and them, and they just kind of evaporate. That's what Brawl gets to do. It gets to walk on top of you and murder you. And it's incredibly powerful right now because you can play it with a number of different characters. We talked about those Brawl dive hybrids, Iron Fist, Magic, Daredevil. While they can be, diving backlines and baiting out cooldowns and maybe even getting assassinations, they have the potential or the ability to just close in on whoever the Groot walls off, right? If that is a Magneto, if that's a Strange, if that's a DPS, if that's anybody, it doesn't matter. These characters can just run through them, right? And the easy way to think about whether or not a character could play into Brawl is think about, could that character push a Strange if that Strange was, being walled off by a Groot? Can a Hela do that? Not really. Can an Iron Man do that? No. So these are not Brawl characters. Characters need to be able to walk into the enemy with your team. That gives them the ability to brawl with your team or fight from those close ranges and close in on weaknesses in the enemy team comp. Now, let's talk about the compositions, though, because Brawl is not the only comp. It's getting a lot better this season, but actually, we are in a meta for the first time in a long time that all three are very represented right now in ranked play: Poke, Dive, and Brawl. So let's talk about what is their relationship, what are their strengths and weaknesses, and how do you play them against each other? Well, in some ways, it's a bit of rock, paper, scissors, but it's not quite that simple. So first of all, let's talk about Poke, which is long distance damage dealing. You're going to be playing characters like Hela, Black Widow, potentially Hawkeye. These are characters that are going to be doing damage from range, trying to get kills and get value from range. And you typically want characters that can help them do that, characters like Magneto that can simultaneously poke other characters with them and apply long distance damage, but also can control the front lines so that they can have more space. So, you know, they're not being walked on 24/7. There's not a tank in their backline 24/7 because the Magneto kind of holds them at bay. And he can also contest angles, making it easier for the poke characters to get various angles. Now, basically, if the fight stays long distance, poke always wins because that's what they're trying to do. Just play at that range, and they're trying to use the fact that they have a long effective range or a far effective range to win fights because they're constantly keeping their distance. So the next comp that we're going to talk about, Brawl, this is how you win. You close in the gap. Like, you are going to lose against these characters unless you can find a way to get close to them. This is exactly why a character like Groot would really like to take closer range engagements up against the Magneto than stay at range. He just doesn't do a ton of damage. He doesn't trade very well, but get him in his effective range and he out-brawls anyone on the front line. We think about the same thing with a Hawkeye. If you are fighting him from range, the longer you allow him to do that, the more effective he'll be. So you want to pick and choose your battles, choosing to not fight him in his range and finding a key moment to close in that gap and brawl him, fight him from a very, very close range where you're effective and he has very little time to hit his shots. Now, the best way to enforce this is typically through routing, trying to use natural cover and bits of terrain, and choose to close in that gap when there is a key moment, when someone's at a position, and not peeking ranged characters for too long where you're not being very effective because that's not your character's strength. You're better at close range. Now, the third type of composition is dive, and dive typically wants to surgically target certain characters, and there's hypermobility involved. And one of the things that you'll know is that there are many characters that are crosses between different things. Like we talked about a character like Magic, who's a dive brawl hybrid, capable of being played in a dive comp or a brawl comp. And there are some characters that can be played in a lot of different flexible ways, characters that maybe don't fit the composition perfectly, but can still find ways to get value. In spite of that, characters like Psylocke are always finding ways, regardless of the composition, to get value. Now, going back to dive compositions typically want to jump onto a specific target. It's either an isolated DPS most of the time, or it's going to be supports of the backline, although it depends. Like, supports have a lot of ways to defend themselves, but if you have multiple sources of a dive, you know, multiple characters going in, a Venom going in, baiting out cooldowns, followed by a Psy, followed by a Daredevil, typically you can overwhelm them. Once you get those first kills, it doesn't really matter that you're going to lose on raw strength to like a brawl if you can manage to get the initial picks early. Dive typically wants to find the weakness and exploit the weakness. They're either finding it and then getting out safely using their mobility to live, or they're finding it and killing, and then even when the enemy team finally comes back and helps and peels, it doesn't matter that they have a matchup advantage at that point because they already got the kill. But that being said, even though there are ways to counter every single strategy regardless of how you play, I will say that dive has an inherent strength against poke because they just get to jump on these isolated long distance damage dealers and they have the easiest way to bridge the gap to them. Poke is going to have an inherent strength to Brawl because Brawl doesn't have a consistent way in order to get in close. There's no speed boost or anything that you can rely on consistently. So like a true Brawl comp is going to have a hard time against a Poke comp that just constantly backs up and backs up and backs up. But luckily there are some Brawl dive, you know, combos or characters that do both. So you can kind of cheat a little bit in building your composition. And then Brawl is going to have a bit of an advantage against dive simply due to the fact that Brawl wants to fight at close range. Dive still has to come close range. So if you can survive the initial onslaught, you will actually trade more favorably. Now, if I were to give you one tip about building good compositions in this meta, I would say you want to double down on what is working or what the core thing is in your composition. So if your comp is trying to play Brawl, right? You have a Groot, you have characters that want to brawl on the front line. You do not want to just randomly play Black Panther there or even Spider-Man. And the reason is because these are characters that don't want to fight frontline. They don't really want to fight with the tank. They don't really want to close in on the tank. they want to do their own thing. In a very similar way that like Hela also doesn't really pair well with a Groot in a brawl, because the Groot is going to wall off people, get them really weak, and you are going to be able to do nothing to aid that. In a very similar way that like if you're playing a poke composition, let's say you're playing a Mag, you're playing a Hela, you're playing, you know, a Mantis, Adam, triple support comp. So everything that you're doing is poke, and instead of playing like a second tank, a second poke tank, or, you know, whatever else, you decide to randomly play like an Iron Fist here. Now, there's a lot of problems because your entire comp is a poke comp. So nothing in your composition is going to be baiting out any type of cooldowns. Nothing's going to be baiting out Luna Freeze. Nothing's going to be baiting out Invis like push. Nothing's going to be baiting out a Mantis sleep or a freaking anything. A Bucky uppercut. Nothing's going to be baiting out any of that. So now that you're Iron Fist, you got to realize that now all those cooldowns are going to be safe for you. And they're going to be safe for you alone. And you're making the job way harder on yourself, because they have nothing else to use the cooldowns on. It's only going to be you. And in addition to that, your entire team is trying to create angles, hit breakpoints, get pickoffs, and you're doing nothing to help those things. If you played another poker, or even a character that could just follow up on the plays that your team made, something like a Psylocke actually would be really good here, because you could finish off or confirm low HP targets and get out. Iron Fist is not doing any of that. Like, he's brawling, typically baiting out cooldowns of the backline, brawling the front line. None of that is really relevant in a poke comp. Like, yes, you can make it work, but you're making it really hard on yourself. And this is an easy way to set yourself up for failure before you even play the game. Now, the next big meta change I want to talk about is the rise of Gambit. Gambit is here, and he's S tier, baby. He's so freaking good. He's good in duo and triple support. He's very, very good in both. But he does play differently depending on what you do. In a duo support comp, you're going to need to use your cards a bit more. You're going to need to heal a lot more. And typically, you're going to be playing a lot based on your ultimate. If you're like close to your ultimate, you're just going to be playing passive, playing to heal everyone up, playing to tempo win off your ultimate. And in triple, you typically play far more aggressively. It's going to depend on what your composition needs. Some comps are going to be really hard to keep up in duo support anyways, but some comps are going to need less heals. It just kind of depends on what your front line is, how much damage they're taking, and things like that. But if you are playing triple support with a Gambit, typically as Gambit, you need to be way more proactive, off-angling a lot more, trying to get kills, trying to be an active damage dealer and playmaker a lot more. But you can do that. A Gambit can do everything. That's the thing about Gambit that makes him so good. From great mobility to constant damage dealing to constant playmaking with the anti to being able to cleanse ultimates, there's just so much that Gambit has. He just is everything that any comp would want, and because of that, he has the highest pick rate. I mean, he is new, that also affecting it, but he's also just so freaking strong. But truly, the best part about Gambit is his ultimate. Gambit's ultimate is so strong, and the thing that is important to understand about Gambit's ultimate is it's not the healing or the cleanse or the extra bit of damage or the jumping, you know, ability to moon jump. None of that is what makes the ult so strong or feel so strong. The thing that makes Gambit ultimate so uniquely strong is the speed boost. You gotta understand that, especially as you start to climb the ranks, one of the things that players will do is once they bait out an ultimate, it could be an Invis ult, a Rocket ult, even a Luna ult, they will do something called kiting. And kiting is just backing up and either denying line of sight or playing passive enough, back enough to where that ultimate, that defensive ultimate, whatever it is, can't also be used to kill you, right? Because if, like, we go in and we Psylocke ult, and they Invis ult and they stack in it. They survive the Psylocke ult, and if we still fight there, not only did they survive the Psylocke ult, but they get to use the Invis ult to kill us because they're fighting us. We can't kill them, so they just kill us with it, right? So you typically kite. You bait it out, you kite, you back up, you leave, you back out of the fight, and then you get to re-engage afterwards after you waited it out. The thing about Gambit ult is he gets to simultaneously save teams from whatever nonsense you're doing, and there's a lot of nonsense he can save your team from. And in addition to that, you can't kite it. You cannot run. You have to fight it. You have to ult back because they are so fast. It's not like an Invis ult. It's not like even a Luna ult that they can technically walk with it. Everyone's faster. Everyone's going so fast chasing you down, you're not going to get away. Which means that you have no choice but to counter ult, and the window is going to be so tight there that if you mess up that window, you will just die anyways. And that's what's so strong about this ultimate. It's an unkiteable support ult that can just win you team fights. It can deny enemy plays, it can switch the tempo of a fight instantly, and it is impossible to run away from. They're going to catch you and they're going to get you, so you have to use an ult. And if you don't have one because you used it aggressively and then Gambit ult, got everyone to full, cleansed it, gave them mobility, it's not like you can suddenly run away. It's too late. You're just going to die. So it's such a strong ultimate, and it's such a powerful tempo flip ultimate that is unlike any other ult that we've had up to this point, and it's super important to understand that. Then the number one tip I'll give you with it is that you really do want to hit everyone you possibly can with it, but if you're going to hit anybody, you really want to hit your DPS, especially if they're hypermobility DPS, because they're the ones that are going to be able to go in and get the most use out of it. Now, that's not the only support that has risen. Invis has also seen a massive increase in pick rate. And here's the thing, Invis is the only support that has seen a massive increase in pick rate, besides, of course, Gambit being new, because even though Rocket got buffed, he saw a massive drop in pick rate. Jeff, who was very dominant last season, saw a massive drop in pick rate. Cloak, who also got buffed, saw a massive drop in pick rate. And Luna has seen a huge drop in pick rate. So a lot of these supports have lost, and it's been given to Gambit. But Invis has gained. She's gained even in spite of Gambit's arrival. And it's because her buffs are just so freaking massive. It's just insane. She is unkillable in a backline unless there are multiple characters after her. If only one character goes for her, and she's at least a little bit aware of that character coming, she just has every tool you could possibly imagine. Pushing them away or pulling them back in if she somehow wins the fight. Being able to do a ton of damage. Being able to shield herself and block valuable cooldowns plus heal herself. Being able to jump away and go invisible if things go bad. The combination of all those things together, plus the fact that she's mostly not going to be that far away from someone that can help her very easily, the other support or whoever else, she's so strong. Backline's so strong. The buff that they gave Invis to counter backlines far outweighed any buff they gave to like characters like Spider-Man or anything like that. Characters that are trying to kill you, those characters are just going to have a really hard time. And fighting Invis straight up is really hard. And this is one of the things that's kind of holding Dive a bit back. I mean, Dive can still be really good when you have a Cap or Venom baiting out these cooldowns. Characters like Daredevil that just get to blitz through very fast. Dive can still be good. And characters like Psy that also can just like constantly pressure. But Invis is a very hard obstacle to beat for a lot of teams because she's just that strong. And you pair Invis with a Gambit, and all of a sudden you have a very unkillable Invis, a Gambit that can be proactive and not too worried about peeling for his Invis, and just be part of the offense, be someone that is going in, diving in, making plays. And it's just such a strong combo because it's a combination of so much playmaking, very powerful ultimates, and all around Invis is just such a massive winner. And because of all of her strengths, we're actually seeing an increase in her ban rate. Now, there are some special strategies that involve banning Invis, but also just off of power level alone. I think teams that are not playing Invis like to ban her, and anyone that wants to play a diver just wants to ban her too. You gotta kind of understand that Invis is one of the worst supports to play with dive comps because she doesn't have very long distance heals. She's very poor playing alongside divers, and she's very good against them. So it makes sense that true dive players and ranked just want to ban her because she's never a character that is going to aid or enable dive in any way. Now, there is one meta strategy that is rising to do with banning Invis that is incredibly scary. It's horrifying. It's even happening in Celestial. It's very strong. It's the Kidnap Strat. And this is what you do. You ban Invis, and then you ban one of the two, Emma or Bucky. I think Bucky is the more valuable ban, but that's who you ban. And what do? You play Angela, and you play Wolverine, and you proceed to just take people off the map all game. Now, you can only do this on certain maps. On certain maps, certain Koth maps, certain maps with places for you to deposit people. But it's so strong when Invis is banned and Bucky is banned or Emma is banned. There's just very little you can do about these characters, especially Angela. Wolverine is one thing. He can be pretty difficult to deal with too. But Angela can be completely oppressive. Because here's the thing about Angela. There are only a few good counters to her in the game. Characters like Invis are very good because you can pull her and force her to drop people. Characters like Bucky can ground her and output a lot of damage. But Other than that, there's very few good counters to her that are meta. It's literally only Bucky and Viz are the only meta ones. Like, yeah, the Thing can counter her, right? But the Thing is not really that good in the meta, so you lose to the field a lot of the time. Characters like Thor can counter her. He's really, really not good in the meta. I'm talking about higher elo here. And because of that, you typically will lose to the field. So characters that are good against her are just not tuned strong enough to do anything about her, and the few that are bannable. And that just kind of creates an opening for this comp that makes it so that the characters that can interact with Angela well just get banned, and then there's nothing you can do. You look at the roster and you're like, I don't know who to play here. We're just getting scooped up by Angela over and over again, and I feel like I'm shooting her nonstop and I can't kill her because I'm Hela, and I can't do anything about her on Hela. And that's literally how the game will go. Now, the thing about this, though, is when the opponents build their entire strategy around this, then you need to throw all your preconceived notions out the window. Like, if you're just still jamming Magneto because you think, oh, Magneto's meta, I'm just going to jam him here, even though that comp, like Angela, just hard counters you on Magneto, you're just throwing. Like, that is, it's weird to think that, oh, the best tank in the game, which is Magneto, is someone I should actually swap off of here. You should, because nothing is going to save you from getting pulled off. No one on your team could possibly do it. And if you are a DPS that could easily get pulled off, you should probably be playing a mobility heavy DPS. If you're a tank that could get pulled off, you should probably be playing a mobility heavy tank or something that could survive. Play that untraditional thing. Play that untraditional Thor. Play a character that doesn't get farmed, because that's how they're trying to cheese the win, is by, you know, creating these conditions where you're stuck on characters that you think are like safe. They're really just gonna get farmed by this weird, you know, we scoop you and throw you off the map comp. Now, let's talk about the banned characters, the characters that are the most banned, and why are they being banned? Are they rightfully being banned? Let's talk about it. So first off is Daredevil. Yes, Daredevil is rightfully being banned. This character is an absolute menace. Even in the face of Invis, this character can just blitz teams and run down teams in a way that other characters can't. Very, very fast time to kill, a lot of survivability. The character is very difficult to deal with. And most of the time, if you're having no trouble dealing with Daredevil, it's just because that Daredevil is not good enough to make you respect him. But as you climb and as you go up against better Daredevils, there are absolute menaces on this character that feel impossible to interact with, and they feel like they could solo your team at any time. Daredevil's a character that can dip in and out of fights at will. You can't really chase in a 1v1 because he can kill you. He has perfect information about his engagements because he can see through walls. And just the combination of all of that together is very hard to deal with. So he's mostly pick or ban right now. Now, next up is Hela, and Hela is also feeling very, very oppressive, and Hela alone is very hard to deal with in the hands of someone who has great aim, but combine that with Namor and the team up alongside that, a character that is just getting a ton of free value, and the comp just feels really difficult. Like a constantly flanking Namor plus a constantly flanking Hela just feels like you have so many angles to deal with, and it can almost feel overwhelming. And I feel like a lot of the time when you do this, you put the game into the other Hela Namor, you know, on your team. And if they're playing Hela Namor and you're not, I mean, good luck. That's going to be a very, very difficult game. So Hela's also a worthy ban. Now, Sai is still one of the best DPS in the game, a top 3 DPS, so freaking strong with that ultimate that can kill through defensive ultimates, a character that can do just a little bit of everything, and just a very reliable character all around. Now, Sai is definitely ban-worthy as well, a character that I do feel like is something that sometimes does slip through the gaps and can feel, you know, either you don't care about it or it's impossible to win the game depending on how good that Psylocke is. She's just such a high skill ceiling character that there are definitely crazy levels to this character, but this kind of runs into the problem where it just feels like there's so many things to ban. Like, you can't let Daredevil through, you can't let Sai through, you can't let Hela Namor through. It's like, can you ban it all? You can't, but if something goes through and there just happens to be a main of that character that it just went through on their side, good luck. It makes the game way harder. I will say in general, though, that Sai is a bit easier to interact with than Daredevil and Hela Namor. So that is something to consider, but Sai is still so strong. It's weird. The next is Invis, a character that is still seeing bans, even though the character is quite a bit weaker than she was before, just based on just the competition and the field. I think banning Emma is going to be purely a decision based on who you play. Some characters are not going to want to play against Emma at all still. Characters like Hulk, characters like Strange, especially if you're solo tank, you do not want to play against an Emma. But you don't really care about Emma all that much if you're playing Groot, if you're playing Magneto with the new bubble and the new team up. You don't care about her all that much. Venom can just grapple away with ease easy swing, and Cap can just be really aware of her position, so he has counterplay there too. A lot of DPS don't really care, but some of them do, like Magic. So it's just going to be situational, but like it's hard to justify banning Emma when there's so much other things to ban, right? Now, E is Invis. This is the next character that I think really makes sense to ban if you're trying to be proactive. You're like, hey, there's all these crazy things. Daredevil, Hela, Psy, Emma, all these things that I just really don't want to deal with. Let's just play a proactive strategy and do our own game plan better. So instead of trying to stop all these potential things that the opponent could play, we're just going to do what we want to do, but make it easier, and we're just going to ban Invis. So we're going to do our pull people off the map strat, or we're going to do our we're all going to dive strat. I think that could be pretty valid in some situations because, like, it's just really hard to get all the perfect bans. But it is going to be a bit unfortunate that both Daredevil and Hela Namor are good against dive. So that is another thing to consider. But typically, some of those other things will get banned too. Now, F is Mag, and I think that Mag can be a reasonable ban if you are specifically not going to play Mag for one, and two, going to play something like Punisher, and you want to just not have to deal with, you know, Magneto rocks. Also, if you're playing like, I don't know, Iron Man, probably. There's some really weird niche stuff you could do. In general, he feels pretty low on the totem pole for things that are important to ban. And I honestly think that you get a little bit more value banning Gambit. If your team's not going to play Gambit, banning Gambit, you know, gets rid of its Mag team up. And I think Gambit is so just powerful that it's hard to justify not playing him. Like, if you're going to play like Invis Rocket in your comp and no one is a Gambit player, yeah, I don't know if I don't think you should just be letting Gambit roll. If you don't know what else to ban, he's a pretty safe starter ban because it's rare that he's going to get double banned, but he's really just good in the neutral. He wins the game slowly over time, so he's a good ban overall. Now, the last one is Peni, but let's first talk about this new meta development, and it's the fact that Peni is OP. Based on the numbers, let's talk about it. So, winning over 59%, the highest win rate without the team up across ranks. That's a crazy percentage. That's extremely high. Well, in Celestial, it's 62%. That's crazy high. And with Rocket, it's over 68%, which is insane. That's how much this character is winning. Like, this character is so freaking strong. And I understand that the win rate is not going to be a perfectly accurate win rate because Pennies are not playing Peni in every situation, right? They're picking her spots. But in her spots, she is borderline oppressive. She's extremely broken in her spots. On defense, on certain choke points, she is so strong that it's almost worth just learning. In fact, it is worth just learning Peni for playing in those situations. Now, if you can get that Rocket team up and play those first situations, and then if it doesn't work, you can swap off. That gives you that really high upside, the 68% upside with, you know, a fine downside. Like, you don't have to one-trick Peni to get that crazy value with her. You can just learn Peni and then just try it with a duo, and then if it doesn't work, you swap off. But you're just going to have some crazy first-point holds a giant percentage of the time. That's why this win rate is so high, because it has so many first-point holds, more than any other type of composition. And here's the thing you need to understand when going up against Peni. It is counter or lose. That's how Peni is. Like, you walk out of spawn, you're like, oh, we got 4 minutes, we're good. I'm going to see if Black Panther works, and I'm going to try him for 3 lives. Or I'm going to see if Magic works, and I'm going to try him for 4 lives. Or I'm going to see if Cap or Venom works. This is a recipe for disaster. Like, if you let the opponent win fights for free and build up ult tempo on you, you could decide to swap off later, and it doesn't matter because they have so many more ults than you. Like, it's really important that you walk out, identify, hey, they're on Peni Rocket. I need to play a character that can do something about Peni Rocket. I need to play a character that doesn't fold to Peni Rocket. I need to play a character that can help clean out the generators, deal damage from range, burst down the Peni, pull her out, you know, do damage from distance. Some characters like Bucky and Jean are really good against Peni. Characters like Mag that take an angle. Characters that don't dive into the generators, dive into the mines. This is all incredibly important because Pennies are just first point holding teams over and over again. And the reason it's happening is because people don't respect a Peni until it's too late and you already lost. Peni is the single most polarizing character in the game, like the closest thing to rock, paper, scissors that we have. And if you don't change your goddamn fucking paper into freaking a rock to beat their scissors, you're just gonna lose it. You're gonna lose the game. Okay, I'm sorry. Enough crashing out. Now, quickly, let's talk about the state of each of the 3 roles and what's happening inside the role as far as pick rate and balance. So first off, state of tanks. There are a lot of options to play in tanks that all feel really, really strong. Even though Mag typically stands above the rest, I think there's good viable options across the board and across the strategies, from Brawl to Poke to Dive. But there are some characters that have gotten left behind. I think Thor has gotten left behind. He needs some love. I think Banner is not quite as powerful as some of the other options. I don't think the buffs were enough compared to what other characters got. But for the most part, you still have a lot of options, and these characters can still get wins, and you can still climb with them. Now, for DPS, there are many, many really, really powerful characters all throughout the DPS role. But there are also equally a ton of characters that are borderline unplayable, or there are other characters that are like strictly better than them. Like, you could play Squirrel Girl, but like Moon Knight is almost strictly better. Like, there are a lot of characters that are like just better versions of what you could do. So like, you could play X character, but why not play Y character? I think that's probably just true for every hero shooter. It becomes that at some point. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of strong options. I think the field, though, is more open than it has been in the past. Same way with tanks. And then for supports, there's also a lot of good options. I think there's very, very strong characters just across the board, even though Invis and Gambit are kind of ahead of the pack right now. Jeff, really, really great. Luna, still really good. Like, she's not all of a sudden unplayable. Cloak and Dagger, still really, really great. Great for tempo, great for combos. And then, you know, triple support is still good with, like, Mantis and Adam. Still very, very good. Like, Ultron still sucks. But, you know, there's a lot of different options that you could play besides Ultron. And I do think that overall, the state of support is rather healthy. And by that, I mean there's just a lot of options that you could choose from. And triple is not like super busted or oppressive right now, at least in ranked play. We're still seeing a lot of good 2-2-2 dominance, even if triple support is still viable as well. So all in all, I do think that the meta is very diverse. There's a lot of things that you can do and a lot of ways to win games, but there's also a ton of ways to lose some. But let me know down below how you feel about the changes in the meta and what buffs or nerfs do you want to see next going forward to further develop the meta in a way that you like. Anyways, smash the like, subscribe, check out Proton and the links down below, and I'll see you next time.